Blackhawks play great, but they still lose.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick, do me a favor, go and hit that like button. Jump in the comment section down below as well to let me know your reaction to last night's loss to the Maple Leafs. Be sure that you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Also, I'm really closing in on my goal of 2,000 subscribers and really would appreciate all of your help. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know about today's sponsor, which is FanDuel. Be sure to go and visit FanDuel.com right now if you're not already a member to have a chance to win $150 worth of bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. 4-1 loss for the Blackhawks last night to the Toronto Maple Leafs as they've now dropped 3 in a row in back-to-back games here to begin the month of December. Not a performance to be frustrated about last night, though, Blackhawks fans, as they truly played one of their best games of the entire season. They outshot the Maple Leafs, first time they've outshot an opponent since November 6th against the Detroit Red Wings. They also had a whopping 54-25 advantage in 5-on-5 shot attempts, 28-16 edge in 5-on-5 scoring chances, and 14-8 lead in 5-on-5 high danger chances. Plus, they won the expected goals for battle 2.83 to 1.13, but Anthony Stolarz, who was in net for the Leafs, was absolutely marvelous, standing on his head to stop 27 of the 28 shots that he faced. Lukas Reichel winds up being, the only Blackhawk to get the puck past Stolarz in this one, his third goal of the season and second in the last 4 games. Pat Maroon tallies the primary assist as the fourth line stays red hot. That's now Maroon's 5th point over his past 5 games as well. But unfortunately, that's all the Blackhawks offense was able to muster up. Connor Bedard also has his 3-game point skid snapped, and the Blackhawks sadly waste one of their best outings of the entire year as they fall 4-1 in Toronto and drop to 8-15-2 through 25 games here in the 2024-2025 regular season. As far as what went wrong for the Blackhawks last night, it really wasn't all that much. As I mentioned, they played spectacularly, but Anthony Stolarz was the main thing that went wrong for him. They just happened to go up against a red-hot goaltender, and Stolarz in that second period, it really felt like there was an opportunity there for the Blackhawks. Down 1-0 going into that middle frame, but they came out roaring, and they mustered up a whopping 18 scoring chances at even strength in the second period alone. That has to be one of the best, if not the best, offensive period out of the Chicago Blackhawks. And because of an unfortunate bounce, which I'll also get to here in just a second, they wound up getting outscored 1-0 in that period. So frustrating. Basically a synopsis of the entire season. They do a lot of good things, but it just isn't enough. At the end of the day, all you can really do is tip your cap as Anthony Stolarz and the Maple Leafs goaltending continues to be outstanding here early on in the season. But I'll tell you what, Blackhawks fans, what also killed the Hawks in this game was another shoddy sequence after scoring a goal, and we saw that absolutely torch them on Sunday afternoon against the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Jackets were able to respond within 3 minutes of each of the Blackhawks' 3 goals in that game. And we saw that happen again last night against Toronto. Lukas Reichel finally gets the Blackhawks on the board early on in the third period to cut their deficit in half to 2-1. Feels like they have some good momentum on their side to possibly go and tie that game up. And shoot, who knows? Maybe win in regulation, maybe win in overtime. But what happens just 21 seconds after Reichel's goal? Toronto is able to regain their man advantage. And I think the most frustrating part about it is the Blackhawks had their shutdown trio out there on the ice after that goal. Nick Foligno, Jason Dickinson, Ilya Mikheyev 3 veterans, 2 super veterans in Dickinson and Foligno, who are defensive specialists and have been around with this team, trusted upon by Luke Richardson. Huge low blow below the belt for them to be on the ice for that goal that wound up kind of deflating any hopes of a Blackhawks comeback. So that really is what wound up killing them and kind of canceling out any hopes of clawing their way back in the third period. And then what also killed the Hawks, I hate to be that guy. I don't ever like, having excuses in terms of the what went wrong section in my game recaps, but the puck luck for the Blackhawks has just been absolutely brutal. I mean, we saw it on Friday against the Minnesota Wild. An unbelievable bounce for Jared Spurgeon's opening goal of the game off of defenseman Connor Murphy. And then the game-winning goal, Spurgeon's second of the night, is a shot that Peter Mrazek literally saves, as I've mentioned before, 999 times out of 1,000. Well, a crazy bounce wound up being the game winner here last night again against the Leafs, as John Tavares, credited with the game-winning goal. I don't even think he was trying to put this puck on net. It just looked like it was a turnaround centering feed that happened to deflect off of Alex Vlasic's stick. I think it hit Connor Murphy's left shoulder as well and somehow goes up over the glove of Arvid Soderblom. That winds up being the game winner. I don't know what is with these crazy bounces going against the Blackhawks recently, but for whatever reason, doesn't seem like they can buy one of those bounces of their own. So frustrating that these breaks continue to go against the Hawks. And that's why the YouTube thumbnail of today's episode is the Hawks can't catch a break. It really feels like that's kind of where they're at right now. But I'll tell you what, Blackhawks fans, I know obviously this team is well behind the 8 ball at this point. They've lost 17 of their opening 25 games. We're past that Thanksgiving date that I've talked about a lot of NHL players and coaches have circled, because that's kind of when you have a good feeling about what your team looks like and what your makeup is. And for this Blackhawks team, we know they're going to be a bottom feeder once again here this season, unfortunately. But if they can play this style of hockey, and quite honestly, I didn't think they played terrible on Sunday against the Columbus Blue Jackets. They didn't play all that bad whatsoever on Friday against the Minnesota Wild. Like, even though they have lost 3 games in a row, the style of the hockey, their competitive fire has been better, and I do think they're bound for some better offensive puck luck here moving forward, knock on wood, because they easily could have potted 4 or 5 goals last night with the amount of scoring chances and high danger opportunities that they generated. Just the Leafs defense came up with some big time shot blocks, and Anthony Stolarz was absolutely fantastic, and the bounces once again go against this Blackhawks squad. There's my recap of the Blackhawks' 4-1 loss to the Maple Leafs last night, as they've now dropped 3 consecutive games. Coming up in just a moment, I'll talk about Connor Bedard finally getting a look on the top line with Tyler Bertuzzi. Real quick though, Blackhawks fans, I do got to talk to you all about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And Prize Picks is now the easiest and most exciting way for you to play daily fantasy sports, because all you have to do is simply pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Do you think Connor Bedard will get more than 0.5 goals next game against the Boston Bruins, the team in which he scored his first NHL goal against? Or how about Bedard for more than 1.5 points? You can now cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this hockey season when you run your game with Prize Picks. One thing I also really do enjoy about Prize Picks is it's the only real daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players were to get injured. So be sure to go and download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps when you download Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick, just wanted to thank you all for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your Tuesday. Now for your second listen, be sure to go and check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast so that you can become a fantasy hockey expert with daily tips from Steal and Flip. You can go and find Locked On Fantasy Hockey right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 2. Despite losing both games over the Thanksgiving weekend, I didn't imagine that Blackhawks head coach Luke Richardson would shake up the forward lines and defensive pairings a little bit in Toronto last night. And when I first saw Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times, who of course travels with the team on the road, he's the one that usually breaks the road lineup changes or whenever there's going to be different forward lines or defensive pairings than we expect when they get on the ice for the pregame skate. Ben Pope is always the one to usually let us know those updates. And when I saw Ben Pope tweet out last night that Richardson had tinkered with the top 6 line combinations a little bit, even though the Blackhawks had lost back-to-back games, just with all the tinkering that has been going on this year, I wasn't too excited to see what these new combinations were going to look like. However, I was pleasantly surprised to see Tyler Bertuzzi getting an opportunity with Connor Bedard on the Blackhawks top line for the first time this year, something that I think a lot of us Blackhawks fans, and me in particular here on the show, have been screaming for. I figured Tyler Bertuzzi, with his style of play, yes, he lacks elite skating ability. He's not even really a decent skater, as I will get into more here in segment 3. But I still think his game and how he plays gritty and scrappy around the net, I figured he was going to be spending a lot of time with Connor Bedard on the Blackhawks top line. And for whatever reason, it took Luke Richardson 25 games into the year to give Bedard an opportunity with Bertuzzi. They didn't get a look together in training camp, in the preseason, even throughout all these different line combinations that Richardson has gone with. Somehow Bedard ended up with Joey Anderson and Jason Dickinson before he got a serious chance with Tyler Bertuzzi. So I was very interested to see what that top line had in store last night. And it was Taylor Hall, by the way, who was playing on the left wing. Bedard back at the center ice position. Tyler Bertuzzi on the right-hand side. This line didn't generate a ton offensively, but I did think Tyler Bertuzzi had a really strong game, probably had some extra mojo as he made his return to Toronto, as did numerous members of the Blackhawks, Nick Foligno, Ilya Mikheyev, TJ Brody, Joey Anderson was scratched, but he was a former Maple Leaf. Peter Mrazek didn't get the start, but he's a former Maple Leaf. A lot of those guys who were in the lineup for the Blackhawks had some extra fire, I thought, last night and put together some good performances. Tyler Bertuzzi was one of them. I thought he made some nice plays to dig out loose pucks. Unfortunately, the best chance that he probably had with Connor Bedard was a brief 2-on-1 after some good work by Taylor Hall along the boards. 3 Toronto Maple Leafs checkers around him. He manages to get the puck down low to Bertuzzi. Unfortunately, he wasn't aware of how much time he had in that sequence. Tried to quickly get the puck over to Bedard, winds up fanning on it. But I did think Bertuzzi and Bedard showed enough together to give them another opportunity. And they did win, or did have a 13-5 shot attempts advantage at even strength when this line was on the ice last night. They also led 6-5 in scoring chances for. Taylor Hall, I thought, didn't have a very good game, which is unfortunate because he's been buzzing here as of late. Of course, had the hat trick against the Dallas Stars the day before Thanksgiving. He had a lot of turnovers last night, and his neutral zone turnovers are really starting to be a problem. We've seen a couple of them wind up in goals against for the Blackhawks. He just has to make smarter decisions, one being in transition. I do think, with the way this Blackhawks team played last night, even though they only mustered up 1 goal, I would expect Luke Richardson to probably roll with the same forward combinations on Wednesday when the Hawks return to action against the Boston Bruins. I thought this top line did enough to warrant another opportunity, especially when Taylor Hall and Tyler Bertuzzi, both former Boston Bruins, another opportunity again for them to have some extra motivation and extra fire. Would love to see them get another opportunity with Connor Bedard on the Blackhawks top line. The second line was Ryan Donato, Philip Kurashev, and Teuvo Teravainen, with Kurashev, interestingly enough, jumping into the center ice position, Donato moving out to the wing. Personally, I don't like Kurashev at the center ice position. I know the Blackhawks have a huge deficiency at that spot right now. I would probably rather have Ryan Donato there. Just seems like that doesn't really work for Philip Kurashev, but regardless of where Kurashev's played this year, he's been super underwhelming, and I didn't think he nor Teuvo Teravainen played very well last night. Ryan Donato, again, continues to display the shoot the puck at all cost mentality. 4 shots on net last night, nearly picked up his 11th tally of the year and 10th road goal. Believe it or not, crazy to think that 9 of Donato's 10 goals this year have come on the road, but he was the shining star of the second line. Kurashev and Teravainen didn't do all that much, and for the second consecutive game, Teuvo Teravainen threw an absolutely horrible pass on a 2-on-1 rush for the Blackhawks. Not really sure what to do with those two guys. If there is going to be a change to the top line, I would like to see Teravainen up there with Bedard and Bertuzzi, but as I mentioned, I expect the top 6 to look the same once again, but Teravainen did have some good things going with Connor Bedard prior to being slotted down here to the second line. The third line, the shutdown trio of Ilya Mikheyev, Jason Dickinson, Nick Foligno. While I did mention it was super disappointing that they were out there on the ice for the Leafs' third goal that came just 21 seconds after Lukas Reichel's tally to give the Blackhawks some life. Outside of that, though, they had a phenomenal game, and Nick Foligno was one of the better Blackhawks. I mentioned Ilya Mikheyev as well, returning to Toronto, had a really good game, tied Ryan Donato for the team lead with 4 shots on goal. And this trio at even strength had a 10-2-3 advantage in shot attempts, 5-3 advantage in scoring chances, and a 3-2 advantage in high danger chances. And whenever you get that type of added offense from your shutdown defensive trio, that's an added bonus. Fully expect this trio to remain once again together. They had a phenomenal night in Toronto, but not as good of a night as the Blackhawks' fourth line of Pat Maroon, Lukas Reichel, Craig Smith. This trio continues to be unbelievable. They put together the only goal of the game for the Blackhawks and had the best analytics out of any of the 4 lines, 11-3 advantage in shot attempts, 8-1 advantage in shots on goal, 6-2 advantage in scoring chances, and a 4-0 advantage in high danger chances, along with a 91.15 expected goals for percentage. I mentioned Maroon now has 5 points over his past 5 games. Lukas Reichel, 2 goals in his last 3. Craig Smith, back-to-back games with breakaway opportunities. One that, man, the Blackhawks really could have used in the second period. Stolars came up with a huge pad save, but Craig Smith and that speed of his down on the fourth line has been absolutely massive, along with Lukas Reichel, who I thought was phenomenal once again and continues to display the rare ability for this Blackhawks squad to stick handle his way into the offensive zone and set up teammates. He's one of the few players on this Blackhawks team that can do it, and I love to see Lukas Reichel get over 14 minutes of ice time last night, but I know, again, that's only because the Blackhawks had 4 opportunities on the power play, and he plays on the second unit. He doesn't, gets 45 seconds out there, every man advantage. That's what leads to him playing 14 minutes last night because the fourth line was out there for 9 minutes and 52 seconds. And I know this is a fourth line, but it's almost like they're leading the charge for this Blackhawks offense right now. And Lukas Reichel he needs more of an opportunity. And I'll continue to talk about why that is in segment 3. So make sure to stick with me, Blackhawks fans, as I'll be getting into some interesting skating statistics. But yeah, a really good performance out of the Blackhawks forward group. I anticipate this is going to be the same 12 and the same 4 line combinations that we'll see on Wednesday against Boston, and hopefully that leads to a little bit of the dam breaking as the Hawks return to the United Center. Defensively, there was a little tinkering going on as well that I wanted to be sure to mention. Alex Vlasic and Connor Murphy, though, remained as the top defensive pairing. They continue to do their thing. That'll remain the top D pairing until Seth Jones is able to return from his injury, which hopefully will be sooner rather than later. Wyatt Kaiser did play with TJ Brody last night instead of Alec Martinez, interestingly enough. And for the second time in the last 3 games, Wyatt Kaiser has put up monstrous numbers at even strength. He had a 27-9 advantage in shot attempts, 13-7 advantage in shots on goal, 16-5 advantage the Blackhawks had at even strength when Wyatt Kaiser was on the ice. as well as a 10-2 high danger chance advantage. Kaiser had a 79.74 expected goals for percentage in 16 minutes and 40 seconds of time on ice. Continues to play stellar defense on the back end for the Blackhawks. Really good development out of Wyatt Kaiser in these opening 25 games compared to what we saw out of him last year. TJ Brodie also deserves a shout out. He picked up an assist for the second time in the last 4 games and had one of his best analytical games since joining on here with the Chicago Blackhawks. But what stood out to me is Kaiser did this with Alec Martinez a couple of nights ago when he had a monstrous game in terms of the analytics. Now has done it with TJ Brodie. Wyatt Kaiser, with Seth Jones out, hasn't gotten a huge uptick in minutes, but boy, has taken on a lot of responsibility and handled it very, very well. He and Alex Vlasic as the young left-handed defenseman on the back end for this Blackhawks team have been very, very steady. Nolan Allen and Alec Martinez. Nolan Allen got back in there for Louis Crevier after being healthy scratched each in the last 2 games. Pairing had a decent night altogether. Alec Martinez, man, I'll tell you what, he is just really slow out there on the ice. And speaking of that, Blackhawks fans, there are my thoughts on Luke Richardson tinkering with the top 6 forward group and the defensive pairings a little bit. But speaking of slow skaters, coming up in just a minute, don't go anywhere because I still have to talk about some interesting skating statistics recently released by JFresh Hockey. But first, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action in the second half of the regular season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and win $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So that when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you also happen to place your bets. And I know it's been real tough sledding for the Chicago Bears recently, but hey, Matt Eberflus is out of Halas Hall. Can the Chicago Bears get a little bit of an interim coach bump with Thomas Brown now taking over? If you feel that's going to be the case, or if you think they're going to be the same old Bears still, either way, make sure to go and check out FanDuel.com right now for the rest of the NFL regular season. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that's FanDuel.com to go and have a chance to win $150 worth of bonus bets. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Segment 3, JFresh Hockey, someone that I've shouted out and recommended numerous times to all of you hockey fans here on the show these last couple of years. Yesterday, he posted on X some very interesting skating statistics so far in the 2024-2025 regular season. The quickest and slowest forwards, plus the quickest and slowest defensemen. And I really wanted to share some of these numbers with you Blackhawks fans because there are a couple of Blackhawks featured on this list, and I think it will help kind of understand some of the issues that we're seeing with this Blackhawks team through their opening 25 games. So diving into the fastest forwards category, we'll begin with the forwards. Among the 20 fastest forwards in the NHL in terms of top speed, only one member of the Blackhawks cracks this list, and it's Ilya Mikheyev coming in at number 16. And Ilya Mikheyev, undoubtedly, his best offensive attribute is his wheels. But kind of similarly to Andreas Athanasiou, he doesn't really seem to have the finishing touch to keep up with his feet. Hasn't been all that productive offensively so far with the Blackhawks. Hey, his speed certainly is very nice to have out there. There are very few guys on this Blackhawks team, as we'll see, with speed, but unfortunately, Mikheyev's the only one who kind of has that elite top-level speed among these forwards, but he doesn't have very quality offensive characteristics to carry alongside it. Then moving over to the next category, which is speed bursts above 20 miles per hour per 60 minutes, there is another Blackhawks on this list, and he actually cracks the top 10. Coming in at number 9, it's Lukas Reichel with 15.8 speed bursts above 20 miles per hour per 60 minutes. Only Blackhawk who finds his way on this list. And again, to me, when you look at this list and you only see Mikheyev and and Reichel serving as the only Blackhawks, with the way Lukas Reichel can operate out there and the lack of speed, especially in the Blackhawks top six out of their skill positions, but really throughout this roster, like Lukas Reichel's speed is so needed and I think can be utilized in a lot better situations. And I know the Blackhawks power play, the top power play unit has been phenomenal. Truly, the man advantage has been one of the biggest bright spots this year, but they still have a lot of struggles entering into the offensive zone. And Lukas Reichel has shown us this year that he has that ability to lug the mail into the offensive zone, a stick handle around a defenseman or two. And with his top speed that very few other players have in this league, like you're telling me that can't be an asset to help get this team into the offensive zone. And even at 5-on-5, this team really struggles to get anything set up. And when they dump the puck into the O zone, they don't really have the speed to go and retrieve it. Lukas Reichel does. And for him to be, 11th among Blackhawks forwards in time on ice this year, it just continues to rattle my cage when I see stats like this. Like, Lukas Reichel can help, but Luke Richardson, won't let him help. And when he does let him help, it's only 10 minutes per game in a limited role. I just don't understand why Lukas Reichel can't get more of an opportunity. Those are the only Blackhawks forwards, by the way, who who fit into these categories in terms of fastest forwards. Now we're going to transition over to the slowest forwards. And unfortunately, we see many Blackhawks on these lists. In terms of top speed, the slowest forward in the entire NHL, number 1, is Pat Maroon. Blackhawks also have another member of their squad inside the top 20 here, as Nick Foligno comes in at number 15. Then we transition to speed bursts above 18 miles an hour. Pat Maroon is number 2 in that category. Tyler Bertuzzi is number 5. Nick Foligno is number 11. The Blackhawks have 3 of the top 11 in that category in their own forward group. They're slow. They're older than last year. And I don't think this was something that Luke Richardson, based on his off-season additions, really considered. I think he just kind of anticipated that if we get some better players, we get some more experienced veteran players added to this group, this forward group, and this team is going to be better than they were last year. And that just hasn't been the case because there's a clear lack in speed among this Blackhawks forward group. And Bertuzzi, he's been a top 6 guy most of the year. Nick Foligno's been in offensive spots, played on the top power play unit in situations along with Bertuzzi. Maroon plays on the second power play unit. These are 3 of the slowest forwards in the entire league, and it's no surprise that the Blackhawks struggle to enter the offensive zone and get things set up at 5-on-5 and on the man advantage. And then speed bursts above 20 miles an hour. Maroon's number 1, Bertuzzi's number 10, Nick Foligno's number 14. Not a lot of speed in this Blackhawks forward group. Transitioning over to fastest defenseman now. In terms of top speed, Alex Vlasic cracks the top 10. And this, I think, is really impressive, Blackhawks fans, because I knew when the Blackhawks drafted Alex Vlasic, I was ecstatic about the pick because of his long reach, his big body. There's just so much defensive upside there because of his physique. But I never would have guessed that he would have been able to pair great skating abilities and a developing offensive game along with it. It has been phenomenal to see the type of player that Alex Vlasic has been able to be. And for him to be in the top 10 in top speed, I know we don't see his wheels all that consistently, but to know that he is capable of getting to that level and he's still someone who's just going to continue to get better and better and better and continue to develop over these next couple of years, you absolutely love to see that. As far as speed bursts above 18 miles per hour, there are no Blackhawks defensemen in the top 20. Neither are there in the speed bursts above 20 miles per hour category. So Alex Vlasic is the only Blackhawks defenseman that's among the fastest blue liners in the NHL. Going to slowest skaters now among defensemen, as far as top speed, Connor Murphy comes in at number 3. Then we transition to speed bursts above 18 miles an hour. Connor Murphy is number 1, Alec Martinez is number 10, and TJ Brody is number 18. 3 of the 6 defensemen the Blackhawks are regularly icing right now are among the top 20 slowest skaters in the NHL. So it's very clear going through these numbers, the Blackhawks have a huge, huge speed issue. And whenever whatever free agent decisions Kyle Davidson is going to make, not just in the summer of 2025, but in more crucial free agent classes moving forward, he's going to have to do a better job than this in terms of putting a roster together. And quite honestly, based on the prospects that he's drafted and how he's gone about accumulating this prospect pool, he clearly emphasizes a need for speed. So for him to kind of put this lacking of speed roster together here for the Blackhawks, not only in their forward group, but defensively as well, it's a huge issue for the squad right now, and they just don't have enough speed to survive out there. And I think from the eye test, that was blatantly obvious, but seeing these statistics, I thought really resonated the lack of speed issue that this Blackhawks team has. And, that's something they're definitely going to have to address moving forward, because with the way the game is going, it's only getting faster and faster and faster and younger and younger and younger. And I know Kyle Davidson knows that. So he's going to have to do a better job in free agent classes moving forward, because quite honestly, all of the signings that he made last year outside of Craig Smith and, Teuvo Teravainen, who's still not even a great skater. He's a very average skater. None of them really have wheels whatsoever. And that's left this Blackhawks team in a real tough spot, because they don't have a lot of speed. They don't have a lot of offensive creativity. Not a surprise. They're one of the worst offensive teams in the entire NHL. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it's uploaded each and every day. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman too, but go and follow my strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey so you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Tuesdays. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.